After a very long off season, the A's opened up spring training play on Saturday. Let's get into it. Today on Locked On A's.
You are Locked On A's, your daily podcast on the Athletics, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On A's, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. I am your host, Booney, one name. Thank you for making Locked On A's your first listen of the day. I'm from the Bay Area, and I've been a diehard A's fan since 1981. I'm here to bring you a real fan's take, covering everything from Sacramento to, yes, Las Vegas. This is the place for A's fans to get the latest game breakdowns, team news, and more. This is where the passion of the fans take center stage. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. And please do me a favor and hit that subscribe button wherever you are following the show. I have been waiting to do today's show for months, guys. I was getting a little tired of the relocation talk and Johnfisher, and baseball is finally here. Can't wait to get into that. Speaking of baseball, have you ever heard of the term can of corn? It's used to describe a routine fly ball. You ever wonder where it came from? Well, if you do or don't, I have a great story coming up for you. That's later. The A's finally played some games this last weekend. And granted, it's only been two, but who impressed? I am going to give you the two players that really stood out to me. And we'll tell you why just in a bit. You heard it right. There was some baseball this weekend. And the A's opened up spring training play against the Padres and the Rockies. I'll let you know what happened, the details, the game up next. First, today's episode is brought to you in part by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. The A's began Cactus League play on Saturday against the Padres, and before you can blink, the Law Dog, Loris Butler, left off exactly where he was at last year by hitting an absolute seed down the right field line for a double. Jacob Wilson was in the two-hole, and he used his bat-to-ball skills with a productive out to second as Butler advanced to third. Tyler Soderstrom hit a hard grounder up the middle for a base hit that scored Butler, giving the A's a 1-0 lead right off the bat. JP Ginn got the start for the A's. He looked sharp in the first after allowing a leadoff hit to Luis Arias. He retired the next three batters, striking out two of them. Now, believe me, I do understand that this is spring training and we are paying a lot more attention to the individuals' performances than the actual team, but it still felt pretty damn good for the A's to look that crisp in the first inning. Unfortunately, it was short-lived. Ginn gave up 4 hits and walked 1 in the second inning and allowed 5 runs. In defense of Ginn, the balls the Padres hit weren't exactly hit hard. They found holes, they were soft line drives, but it was enough to do the damage. Ginn struck out 4 of the 5 hitters he retired. He had good movement. He had good stuff. And if there was ever an outing you can call solid when you allow 5 hits and 5 runs over 1 2/3 innings, this was it. Now, I'm not going to bore you with all the details of every play in a spring training game, but some notable highlights to keep in mind were Lawrence Butler, like I mentioned, 2 for 3 with a double and a home run. Brady Basso pitching 2 perfect innings. Nick Kurtz had a plate appearance. He drew a walk. Daniel Susak had a RBI sac fly. It's really too early to say anything past that with regard to how players didn't play or didn't perform or how many hits or how many runs a pitcher allowed. It's just way too early right now. They dropped the ball game 10-3 against the Padres. The pitchers got banged up a little bit. Most of the runs they gave up, I believe, were 5 in the second and 4 in the fourth, I believe it was. And I believe the Padres picked up an additional run somewhere along the way to make the score 10-3. On Sunday, the A's shut out the Rockies 4-0. Free agent signing Jeffrey Springs went 2 innings, allowed 2 hits, struck out 2. I don't know how he looked because the games were not being televised, which absolutely drove me nuts. That's all I was looking forward to doing. I paid $7 for your spring training bundle or package or whatever it was called, and it wasn't televised. I was pissed, but too early right now for a Booney rant. We're not going there right now, but yes, pissed that the games were not televised. Touchy subject. Not going to get into it, but so like everyone else, I was looking at the box score. Jacob Lopez and Jack Perkins, 2 hitless innings, which is a very positive sign. Free agent signing Jose Leclerc went an inning, allowing a walk and a hit. The bats were quiet, only 4 hits, highlighted by Seth Brown's 3-run double in the 5th. Shea Langoliers had a double, and Blade and CJ Alexander each had a hit. The A's have the Royals today, 12:10 first pitch. Yes, you guessed it, not televised. Awesome. But I will have that rundown for you tomorrow for sure. I do want to cover a couple players that really did impress me in the game I did see on Saturday. And let's start with the man of the hour, Lawrence Butler. The kid is absolutely on fire. On Saturday, Butler gave us a glimpse of what he's capable of with not just 1, but 2 standout moments at the plate. First, he smoked a double that had everybody in the stands buzzing. Line drive right down the right field line to start off the game. And as if that wasn't enough, he followed it up with a monster home run to right center that seemed to say, hey, remember me? Now, if you have been following Butler's journey through the minors and, yes, his second half last year, you know that he's got raw power and an aggressive approach at the plate. But what stood out to me this weekend was his poise. He looked confident, like he is ready to be the guy. He looked like what he did in the second half. He looked like what I have predicted, that he will finish in the top 5 in MVP votes this year. It is early, I get it, but the A's have been searching for a young talent to step up and make a statement. And Butler seems to be ready to answer the call. Next up, let's talk about Brady Basso. If you don't know his name yet, you might want to start paying attention because this guy is quietly making a push for a spot on the opening day roster and maybe even a role in the starting rotation. On Saturday, Basso was absolutely lights out. He pitched 2 perfect innings. That's right. No hits, no walks, no runs. He struck out 2. Just pure dominance. What impressed me most was his command. He was hitting his spots with precision and keeping hitters off balance with a nasty mix of pitches. He had a very, very nice rhythm, a nice flow. I was extremely impressed with Basso. For a team like the A's that's looking to solidify its pitching staff, Basso's performance is exactly what they need. And granted, yes, it's early. First spring training game of the year. but it is something to look forward to. And let's be honest, there's nothing more exciting than watching a young pitcher come into his own. If he keeps this up, don't be surprised if he's not only on the roster, but also as our fifth starter. Now, let's zoom out for a second and talk about what these performances mean for the A's as a whole. Spring training is all about opportunities. We know that. Giving young players a chance to prove themselves and veterans an opportunity to shake off the cobwebs. But it is also about building momentum and setting the tone for the season ahead. What we saw this weekend from Butler and Basso wasn't just individual success. It was a sign that the team has some serious potential brewing beneath the surface. It's easy to get caught up in preseason predictions and rankings, which, hey, I'm guilty of. But these games remind us why baseball isn't played on paper. It's played on the field where anything can happen. The A's, like I mentioned, have the Royals today. 12-10 start, not televised, by the way. Osvaldo Bido will be on the hill, and I am looking forward to seeing how he does off the momentum he carried in the second half of last year. Have you guys ever heard of the term can of corn? If you have or have not, stick around. I have a story for you up next. Today's episode is brought to you in part by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I've missed my chance with FanDuel. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Baseball, often called America's pastime, is a sport based in tradition and in lore. Its language is peppered with colorful phrases that evoke images of dusty diamonds, roaring crowds, and sunny afternoons. Among these phrases is the curious term can of corn, used to describe an easy fly ball to the outfield, a play so effortless that it's almost guaranteed to result in an out. But where did this expression come from? Well, its exact origins remain elusive. The phrase carries a sense of history, a connection to simpler times when baseball was just not a game, but a way of life. To uncover the roots of the term can of corn, we must journey back to the early 20th century when grocery stores were small, family run establishments. In those days, canned vegetables were staples in American households, and among them, corn was a favorite. Store shelves were often stocked high with cans of corn, requiring clerks to use long sticks with hooks to retrieve them. With a practiced motion, they would tip the can off the shelf and catch it in their hand or apron, a task so routine it became synonymous with ease. Legend has it that this simple act inspired the phrase can of corn in baseball. Just as a grocer effortlessly caught a falling can, an outfielder can easily catch a lazy fly ball drifting through the sky. The connection between the two may seem tenuous at first glance, but it speaks to a time when everyday life and America's favorite game were intertwined in ways that are hard to imagine today. But the story doesn't end there. Another theory ties the phrase to rural roots of baseball itself. In the early days of the sport, many games were played on makeshift fields in the heartland of America. These fields were often bordered by farmland, and it wasn't uncommon for outfields to stretch into cornfields. The cornfield, with its golden stalks swaying in the breeze, became a symbol of the beauty of baseball. Some say that outfielders chasing down fly balls in these settings began referring to their domain as the quote unquote cornfield. And over time, the term can of corn emerged as a shorthand for easy catch in this idyllic backdrop. Whether or not this story is true doesn't really matter. It feels true in its essence, capturing the spirit of baseball as more than just a sport, but as a reflection of everyday life. It's easy to imagine how such moments could have inspired players and fans alike to adopt the phrase, passing it down through generations until it became ingrained in the lexicon of the game. The phrase gained further prominence thanks to legendary Pittsburgh Pirates announcer Bob Prince, known affectionately as the quote unquote gunner. Prince had a knack for colorful commentary, and his use of can of corn during broadcasts helped cement its place in baseball's vernacular. One memorable instance occurred on September 13th, 1970, during a game between the Pittsburgh Pirates and the Chicago Cubs at Wrigley Field. With 2 outs in the bottom of the ninth inning and the Cubs trailing by 1 run, Willie Smith hit what should have been an easy fly ball to center fielder Matty Alou. But in a shocking twist, Alou dropped the ball, allowing Smith to reach second base. Prince exclaimed that Alou had dropped the can of corn, turning what should have been an unremarkable play into an unforgettable moment in baseball history. Prince's colorful phrasing resonated with fans not just because it described an easy play, but because it evoked something deeper, a sense of connection to baseball's humble roots and its ties to everyday life. His words reminded listeners that baseball's not just about athleticism or strategy, but about storytelling, about weaving moments on the field into the broader tapestry of American culture. As with many expressions in baseball, the origins of can of corn are likely a blend of fact and folklore. Perhaps it began with grocers catching falling cans or outfielders chasing fly balls in the cornfields. Whatever its true origin, the phrase endures because it captures something essential about baseball: its simplicity, its accessibility, and its ability to turn ordinary moments into something extraordinary. The story I was told is a story that I am now going to tell you. And to be completely honest, there is no reference, no fact check, or anything that proves that this actually happened. But in my mind, this story is as true as the sky being blue. The legend of Willie Corny Callahan. Long before the grand stadiums of today, before the crack of the wooden bat echoed through the city ballparks, there was baseball in the heartland, in the golden fields of middle America. Boys played the game not on manicured grass, but in pastures where the outfield fence was a row of towering cornstalks. The game was as much a part of their summers as the fireflies and the distant sound of a train whistle at dusk. One such boy was Willie Corny Callahan, a farmhand son with dreams bigger than the open plains. Will wasn't the strongest batter nor the fastest runner, but what he lacked in power, he made up for in heart. He lived for the game, playing until his mother's voice called him in for supper. Will, bring me some corn from the shelf before you come in. Every evening, Will would run into the kitchen, but the cans of corn sat high up on the pantry's top shelf. Unable to reach, he used his father's old wooden stick to tip the can from its perch, catching it neatly in his apron, just as he had caught countless fly balls in the field. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Will and his friends played a game in the shadow of the cornfield. With 2 outs in the final inning, a towering fly ball soared into right field. Will, playing deep, settled under it, barely having to move. As the ball dropped neatly into his glove, he instinctively called out, "Can of corn," just as he did in his mother's kitchen. His friends laughed, and the name stuck. Years passed, and Will grew up, his dream of playing professional ball never quite coming true, but the phrase did. As the boys grew and scattered, they carried the saying with them, calling out "can of corn" whenever they made an easy catch. It traveled with them to sandlots, then high school teams, and eventually into the language of baseball itself. Decades later, old timers in dusty general stores would tell the tale of Willie Callahan, the boy who could always be counted on to catch a ball as easily as bringing down a can of corn from the shelf. And while history may never officially credit him, those who knew the story always smiled when they heard an announcer call an easy fly ball a can of corn. In today's world, where baseball stadiums are architectural marvels and players are global superstars, it's easy to forget that the game's roots lie in dusty fields and neighborhood sandlots. The phrase "can of corn" serves as a reminder of those simpler times, a nostalgic nod to an era when baseball was played not for fame or fortune, but for the love of the game. And perhaps that's why it still resonates with fans and players alike, because deep down, we all long for a connection to something timeless, something that reminds us of who we are and where we came from. Because some legends, like baseball itself, are meant to be passed down one lazy summer evening at a time. Thank you for making Locked On A's your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On MLB. Baseball guru Sully brings a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every rumor and story throughout the off season. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. I will see you tomorrow